don't adjust your screens. That is the dream team here with Patrick Pfingsten joining us. He's had a radio show for a long time, and so he hasn't been able to join us, but he's finally off for a little bit, so we're able to snag him on a Thursday afternoon to record. I know for some of you that's you like Patrick. For the rest of you, you've had a chance to let your blood pressure go down, and now Patrick's going to shoot it through the roof again just before the holidays. So, Pfingsten, what's up, buddy?
Gentlemen and Chris, hello.
Chris was so excited that you were going to be on. He's on vacation this week, somewhere tropical, it seems. And he decided to jump in and actually join us this week, even on vacation. That's how excited he was.
I mean, the fake background looks better than his mom's basement, so it's a step up.
And as part of me working during my vacation, I have sent Gus an invoice for my time this week. Collin, you'll be happy to know I'll be billed at $500 an hour, so have fun paying that. And if you don't,
this better be
I've
a
also
short
had
episode then.
I've also had my legal team draft a full official complaint with the National Labor Relations Board. So real tough situation to put yourself in here, Collin. But I'm happy to work with you on this.
You gonna bill us $3 for that shirt?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if we can expense clothing now, Collin, I mean, you'll be getting a very large invoice from.
I was rounding up from the 250 you paid from the 250 you paid for it. And Michael requested to be off this week because being on the same screen as Pfingsten ruins his street cred. So we got a yin and a yang yet again with Chris and Michael here.
Hey, it's good. It's all good.
It's all good. All right, well, let's start. I mean, Patrick's here, so why wouldn't we just get ourselves in trouble? So let's start there. I've got three examples to share with everybody, and then I'll open it up and let you guys get on your own soapboxes here. But I got to get a little rant out of the way because I'm sick and tired of how lazy Republicans are right now and how they like to blame everybody else for their own failures. And yes, I'm saying their own failures because it's becoming increasingly hard to call myself a Republican, especially in this state. Here's some examples. I was perusing the hearing officer for the objections, their findings. And I'm seeing that Cody Holt's getting removed in Senate District 33. Tassio Fradike is getting removed in the 51st House District. Pete Dabrowski and Schaumburg running against Mussman is getting removed. These candidates can't even file this minimum number of signatures. And I want to talk about a couple of those. Cody Holt. So supposedly he was the grassroots candidate in this race. And yet he filed 1,047 signatures. 1,000 is required. Like literally only 47 over the minimum. Of course you're going to get knocked off. I don't understand. Like, of course he went online and blamed everybody else for his own faults and failures. But you're the grassroots, supposedly, candidate in this race, and you could barely get over 1,000 signatures to get on the ballot. There's no excuses for that. You have nobody to blame but yourself. Of course, he's already commenting and attacking John Curran and others for coming after him and blaming all his problems on them because, that's what the grassroots does. That's what Illinois Republicans do. They blame everybody else for their own failures. Tassio Fradike is a similar situation where she got enough signatures, so kudos on that. But she made a mistake in filing her statement of economic interests. A mistake I understand because
No,
hold on,
No.
hold on. Let me finish. I understand because we get this question repeatedly from our clients. But here's the thing: our clients who were smart enough to actually get expert advice in their campaigns. Tossie's problem since day one has been that she has refused to accept any help, whether from us, other consultants, the House Republicans, anybody else who's wanted to help her give her advice. She hired somebody who doesn't really specialize in this time around, and of course made a mistake that knocked her off the ballot. And yet again, like everybody else, it's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else's failure, despite the fact that this was a completely avoidable mistake. But this is what we do as Republicans nowadays. That's why she's not on the Ela Township Board and not even a candidate anymore. And listen, I love Tossie. She has a world of potential, but she, at this point, I think we can confidently say is never going to fully tap into that potential. So here we are. Last example is this, McHenry County. So we have talked several times about the challenges that we have seen for Republicans in McHenry County. And I want to credit and thank McHenry County Board Chairman Mike Bueller for commenting on our YouTube. And I don't want to direct my comment at him or attack him, but we'll bring that comment up on screen for people to see it. Because he challenged us on that, said they picked up 2 seats in 2024. They've got a solid Republican majority. Where have they lost ground? And this isn't to pick on Mike, because I know Mike's he works really, really hard. This is the fact that I've heard this from at least a dozen people who are center right in McHenry County. pushing back and saying, "You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." Let me give this data again because we have seen Republicans put their heads in the sand repeatedly, whether it was Lake County before it went deep blue, DuPage County before it went deep blue. We see the exact same signs right now in McHenry County. In 2016, it was 13% Republican at the county level. 2018, 2020, it dropped to 8 to 9% Republican. In 2022, it dropped to 4% Republican. Yes, I will say Trump did tick those numbers up slightly. He won the county by 5.3%. So you saw that slight uptick, yes, did help Republicans to have a decent year in 2024. But the trend is awful for Republicans. Our baseline for the county was 12 and a half points for Republicans in 2022. It went all the way down to 8 in 2024. I don't know what it's going to be yet in 2026, but I can guarantee you it's going to go down even further from that. Rauner won the county by 10.3 points in 2018. Bailey only won it by 1.5. If you want context, the progressive tax was defeated by almost 25 points in the county. That's the context here. And here's the last thing. For the first time ever in ruby red McHenry County, there are more Democrat precinct committeemen than there are Republicans. Stop putting your heads in the sand, Republicans. Stop blaming your problems on everybody else. I am sick and tired of the slacktivists that make up the grassroots of this party. They post on social media. They have their blogs. They say how horrible everything is. I mean, psychologists call this victim mentality or learned helplessness. Everything is somebody else's fault. I call it a loser mentality because Republicans in the state seem to love to lose. They're so insecure, they find fault in everybody but themselves. They complain about everything, they whine about everything. Teddy Roosevelt would call them critics from his Man in the Arena speech. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who was actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. There are very, very few Republicans in this state whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood anymore. Stop whining. Get off your asses, go work, otherwise you don't deserve to win. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Your turn, guys.
I mean, I think how do you go into filing with 1,047 signatures when the requirement is 1,000 and expect to stay on the ballot? It's just absurd. Like he should have known better than that. And then just blaming everybody else for the fact that he didn't stay on. I mean, he's one of the guys that's always creating memes on Facebook, which some of the memes are hilarious, but that doesn't get you on the ballot or win you an election, obviously. And then on the Tosi situation, she was on the ballot for state rep once before, so she doesn't really have an excuse for filing her paperwork in the wrong place. It's just, I don't know. I think that at least in those two instances, there are primaries. And that's the point of the petition period. That's the point of challenges. It's supposed to separate, the A candidates from the B candidates, or in this case, probably the B candidates from the C candidates, because we're just really having a hard time up in that neck of the woods. But we didn't have a single person get objected to in St. Clair County. Everybody that filed on the ballot, no problems, got their signatures, did it correctly. So there are people throughout the state that are doing the right things and being effective. But obviously, there are some areas where there's a lot left to be desired. And I think, that's reflected in the election results in November as well, right? If you can't get this stuff right, and if you can't get your petitions right and file them correctly and stay on the ballot, then how do you expect to, win an election? If you can't get at least 1,500 signatures in a state senate district, preferably 2,000, so you file with double, how do you expect to, win a primary and beat the Democrat? It's not going
Clearly,
to
you weren't going to go
happen.
knock on doors to win this race based on that.
Yeah.
Michael made my point exactly on Ufadike. It would be one thing for a first-time candidate to have an excuse to say, I screwed up and filed this piece of paper in the wrong place. She was literally on the ballot in 2024. She literally did this whole song and dance 2 years ago and didn't know any better this time around. That is stupid and lazy and irresponsible, and it showed just how bad of a candidate she was the first time. Listen, you guys have all done petitions. I've done petitions in the past. These are not that hard to do. this is not a huge threshold to get somebody on the ballot unless you're trying to get a fair maps amendment and the 25,000 signatures you need or whatever it is to get on the ballot. It's 500 people for a state legislative seat. It is
In
1,000
3
people
months.
for a Senate seat. It can be done in a weekend. We've put people on a ballot in a weekend. This is lazy and stupid and shows how completely unserious these candidates are. And if you can't do the minimum to get your ass on the ballot, you don't deserve to be in the race and you don't deserve to win that seat.
Yeah, so just two things, because we do want this podcast to be a learning thing for Republicans around the state. So two things. One, Patrick, you and Michael are right that she made the ballot, but she wasn't objected to 2 years ago. She might have made this mistake 2 years ago, and just nobody objected to it. So I would just point that out. But here's the learning thing for people. When I say that we get this question all the time, the question we get all the time, and the mistake Tossie made here, wasn't that she filed in Lake County. The mistake, at least from what I can tell, the mistake she made is a mistake many candidates almost make, which is as a local official, you have to file at the county level. You have to file at the local level, which is a very similar statement of economic interests. You have to file that every year. So we get this question from candidates who are running for office who say, I've already filed my statement of economic interests. Is that okay? Can I just take that receipt and file it with my paperwork? The answer is obviously no. But the thing is, I understand how candidates run into that. Like, oh, I've got the receipt. I've already filed it. It's a question we get all the time. Because we have experience, we're able to tell them, no, that's not okay. You've got to file a new statement with the Secretary of State and then take that receipt and file it with your paperwork. And so if you're watching this, you need to be aware of that it's no. Even if you file at the local level, the receipt from that statement is not enough. You have to file a new statement with the Secretary of State. So take Tossie's mistake and learn from it, please, so we don't talk about this again in 2 years.
And do you know how easy they've made it now to file that statement of economic interest? You can now do it at the State Board of Elections the morning you file your petitions. You can do it literally that morning. You don't have to go to Springfield the day before or the weekend or the week before to file it in person at the index division. You can literally do it at the State Board of Elections. It is the easiest thing. And if you don't know the difference between a local office, a state office, and a federal office, maybe you should rethink running for office.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I've noticed in my, I've been doing Republican politics in the state for, God, 5 years now, going on more than 5 years. I've been to township meetings and central committee meetings where 75% of it is taken up by precinct committeemen or grassroots activists complaining about things the Democrats have that they don't. The Democrats, they'll say, oh, the Democrats, they got all these union members. They go out and knock on all their doors for them. Like, how are we supposed to keep up with that? Or, the Democrats, they have, they have their union money and their special interest money. Like, how are we expected to raise money? But the problem isn't that, you raised what you could raise or you did what you could do, and the Democrats just had more than you had. That is not the problem. The problem is that you're choosing to do nothing because the Democrats have something. And then you look at that and you're like, oh, well, they got this in the bag. Or alternatively, you come up with harebrained schemes that will try to replace something like that, something like door knocking, something like raising money. And then you do those things that have absolutely no political merit to them whatsoever. So that's been one of the most frustrating things. And I've seen it time and time again when I'm at these meetings is that people complain for an hour and by the end of it, absolutely nothing has been accomplished.
Yeah,
And that needs to stop. If we
either they don't get out in the fields and do the hard work, or they want to throw a Hail Mary on every pass. There's no in between, it seems, for many of these people.
Well,
and it's like, listen, if you're not going to do the work, then you're not going to win.
And I'm here to tell you, I've been telling you guys this for years. The Democrats do not have the advantage that you guys think they do. You talk about all these union door knockers they get on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, sure. They might take a picture of 25, plumbers who happen to be knocking on doors that given Saturday for one of their candidates. But in reality, having ran some of those door knocks before for Democratic candidates, if a quarter of them actually do a full door knock and actually do a conversation with the voter, that's a pretty good Saturday. You got a quarter of your union guys actually knocking on doors, talking to voters. Most of the time, those guys are there just for points for their union. So you're taking a situation of look at all these bodies and saying we can't do that. When in reality, you are the grassroots. You are a committed believer in the Republican cause, or at least you claim you have. If you were telling me that you are not as good or better than a bunch of union guys who are there so they can get a better job or points with the union, then I don't know what to tell you. And there's no wonder you people are losing.
Democrats have basic competence in running their campaigns at the state and federal level, which is more than Republicans can say these days. So I would say, yes, they do have a pretty distinct advantage by being able to tie their own shoes.
Yeah, I mean,
I would argue that the amount of competency found within the Democratic Party's operative class isn't as strong as you would think it is. But I will agree with you, because they have so much more bodies and talent in their organization, that does make up for a lot of the incompetence within it that we don't necessarily get to see.
I mean, listen, we all know in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. But here's the deal. Let me close this topic with this. Why does this matter? Because since the last time we've done a podcast, Democrats have flipped the mayor's office in Miami for the first time in 30 years. They flipped a Georgia State House district that Trump won by 12 points. The DLCC and the DCCC have announced that they're significantly expanding their target maps because they see a tsunami behind them in the next election. Why does it matter? Because if Republicans don't get their act together, they're going to get demolished in November. And yes, I said they, because again, I'm struggling right now with this frickin' party. But Republicans are going to get demolished in November in the current trajectory that we're on. That's why we're hammering on this. That's why it matters. You want to bitch and moan for the next 12 months? That's fine. You're going to have a really, really, really rough November 7th. How about you get off your butts and get out there and do something about it? That's the only way you're going to stem this tide, because the current trajectory you're on is not a good one. All right, let's go to the next topic here. Let's talk about the Illinois governor's race. I have a lot of people who are wondering what we're going to say about the Illinois governor's race this week. So let's get into it. Let's start on the Darren Bailey side, because there's some drama for both of the leading candidates right now. So we'll start on the Bailey side. That story broke before the Dabrowski story broke. So we'll start on Bailey. I'm going to mention a young woman, Cecilia Brooks. I'm sort of going to keep it mostly at that. I don't want to put her in a tough spot, but she has pushed this out herself. And so I can at least say her name and feel like we're being okay here. But there are reports of some problems at Bailey's election night celebration, specifically, or election night, his campaign kickoff, specifically amongst some of his staffers, including Brett Corrigan, who's now with Heidner, not with Bailey anymore, about how they treated this young woman and potentially some other young women. I will say, to be fair, some of the people involved with this have been caught in similar situations in the past, and some of the people involved with this have been not super trustworthy in their accounts of those situations, including, from what I've been told, potentially this young woman. So I'm not reading a lot of what's in here. I'm not going to go into it specifically. Here's the thing I want to say. It's yet another thing on the pile that's going to be a problem for Darren Bailey in the general election, because whether this is true or not, just like the unfiled lawsuit regarding Corrigan from the last election, if the Pritzker campaign operatives having an ounce of brains, which they do, by the way, they will find a way to use this incredibly effectively in the general election. And so whether this situation is true or not is really not for me to judge. My point is simply, politically, this is another liability for Darren Bailey in the general election. And that's a problem because that list seems to be growing. We'll stop there and get everybody's thoughts on this before going to the next thing.
Well, I think obviously, like you said, there's probably parts of this that are true, and there are parts of this that probably are inaccurate or misleading, however you want to, spin it. But I think it does show a pattern of behavior, right? And you see these names reoccurring in the police report on this situation, the lawsuit that Brett Corrigan, had drafted but did not file last time. It shows a pattern. And
Yep.
that's a problem for them. Especially when you're getting on Facebook Live on a regular basis saying, we need to open our Bibles to, Psalms 113. How do you square those two? How do you square those two things? How do you expect voters to trust that, oh, Darren's a straight shooter and what he says is what he means, when you have this behavior from his staff, alleged behavior from his staff, and the Facebook Lives tell a different story? Maybe it needs to be mandatory listening for his staffers. I don't know.
One thing I learned or was taught in my early days of being a political operative is self-control. And not going into whether or not this is true or not, just like Collin said, one lesson that I think all of us, myself, Butler, any of you watching can take from this is that respecting the fact that politics is a high energy, high speed business where, you have a lot of fun every now and then. One of the things that we all have to remember is that we, at the end of the day, are faces of campaigns, be it behind closed doors, on expenditure reports, or even in person. We are all faces of a campaign in one way or another. And that holds us to a higher standard than it does the average stockbroker on Wall Street or your corporate girlies downtown. We are held to a higher standard because of it. And we cannot afford, as political operatives, as professionals, to put ourselves even in such positions where it could come at the expense of our candidates and our clients' political viabilities. And I think a lot of people get kind of wrapped up in the buzz of being in politics and rubbing shoulders and rubbing elbows with some important people, big money people, hanging out in Oak Brook at big campaign launches for a candidate for governor. I think that gets to our heads sometimes. But the reality, at the end of the day, we are all supposed to be representatives of our clients and our campaigns. And we need to remember that when we're going out in public and doing things.
It's good advice. I mean, ultimately, clearly Corrigan knew that because if you watch the body cam footage, you could see him saying this was a political event. So we don't want this getting out. Like they knew what this was when it was happening. So clearly that knowledge is back there. Now it's time for people to actually take it to heart.
Just a couple of things. I deal in a world of facts here, so I never, and you should never take something that a campaign puts out on social media as God's honest truth. So make sure you take anything you see like that with a grain of salt. I went through and I FOIA'd the police report. I have the police report. I tried to get the body cam footage, the unredacted, unedited body cam footage that was denied by the Oak Brook Police Department. So I don't have that. But what we do know was that in that police report, there is no real criminal allegation. There is no real act of criminality that was ever being investigated. If you read the police report, it sounds like a belligerent drunk girl, and I'm not victim shaming or anything like that. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there, but what I'm saying is the facts don't dictate. The facts need to dictate the narrative, not what a campaign says, and the facts don't back up everything what a campaign is saying.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, and I agree with you,
It
Patrick.
does look
obviously,
bad, sure.
obviously, you've got a radio show, so it's probably a different scenario here. What I'm talking about is, you can read through all this, and you can absolutely see a TV ad by the Pritzker team in the general election, whether it's true or not. They can use the word alleged, but this young woman has alleged this on social media publicly. So whether whether it can be backed up with a police report or not, Pritzker team could absolutely make this into an ad that would be pretty hard hitting.
Well, and I
All right,
think
let's go to the next one, Michael. Let's go to the Dabrowski campaign. So anybody who's seen my social media probably knows what we're about to talk about next. So the Dabrowski campaign put out a robocall, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But before I do, let me just clear something up here. I was not the source for Illinois Review or Tom DeVore. As a matter of fact, when I posted this on social media, I refused to use Dabrowski's name. And when people asked me, I did not say who it was on social media. I have a philosophy here. My social media accounts reach everyday Republicans, and it's got a much larger reach than this podcast. And so I'm trying my best not to attack any Republicans on my social media because I don't want to hurt the cause. This podcast is meant to hit insiders, and we do. There's only 300 to 400 of you crazies out there who will sit here for 90 minutes at the high level we talk politics. And so amongst us, yeah, we're going to talk about the pluses and minuses for each of these campaigns. And so here, we're going to have the in-depth discussions that maybe I wouldn't have on social media. So there's some people over the Dabrowski camp who seem to think that I was the one who got this over to Illinois Review and DeVore. Number one, Illinois Review hates me. So if you think that they're going to run something from me, you're crazy. And if you think if I want to push something out, you're going to see it maybe via the Illinoise or on Fox 32 or WGN or Chicago Tribune. You're not going to see it on somebody's Facebook page. So if I really wanted to push this, I would have pushed it. Anyways, the point is this. The Dabrowski campaign put out a robocall. It's been posted on a few sites, including just today, just a little bit ago. Capital Facts posted it, so you can go on there. You can go on Illinois Review. Actually, the script for the robocall is pretty well done. So kudos on the messaging. The message was good. However, doing a robocall in 2025, I own a my company works with a telecom company. We work with them very closely. We do a ton of telecom work around the country. We've done robocalls in the past. It's been years since we've had a single candidate ask us to do a robocall. It's dead. Nobody does it anymore. Yet they're doing a robocall, number one. Number two, they're hitting cell phones, which is illegal. You cannot do a robocall to cell phones that haven't opted in. They had a screw up at the end of the script, and they didn't take the 20 seconds it would take to just quickly clean up the little verbal flub, which again just shows the amateur nature of that campaign. They didn't include the opt-out language at the end, which is now required. You have to allow people to opt out, and they didn't include that, and no one's even talking about that error. Here's the thing, all right? TCPA governs this. The FCC governs this. For every cell phone they hit with that call, that's a $500 fine if a lawsuit is filed here. We've seen class action lawsuits filed over things like this before. I'm guessing we're probably going to see something similar here because you'd be an idiot if you're opposing this candidate and you didn't use this to your advantage. It was just a stupid, stupid, stupid mistake, which seemed to be on on the pile of mistakes we've seen from this campaign. I don't understand why we continue to see these super basic mistakes. I don't know. For me, number one, for some of them to blame me for this is just kind of hilarious because it goes back to our first topic of Republicans blaming everyone else for their own failures. And then number two, to think you're going to win a campaign for governor with robocalls apparently a central part of your strategy. You're not a real campaign. You're not a serious campaign. Listen, I've had a lot of high hopes for the Dabrowski campaign. I'm on record believing that I don't think Darren Bailey is the answer. I'm giving him a chance to prove me wrong. So far, he hasn't. So my hope is that Mendrick or Dabrowski or someone could step up. Mendrick's been a non-factor in this race, and Dabrowski has proven that he's just not interested in running a serious campaign for governor. So I guess it's at this point the race is basically over. It's Darren Bailey's to win, unless Dabrowski wants to actually make his New Year's resolution to be a real candidate for governor. But at this point, putting out robocalls and not even following the basic rules that we all knew 2 decades ago, let alone now, I don't know. It's frankly pathetic. It's the best I can do. I don't know. If you guys were hoping for an epic rant, I'm kind of just too done with that campaign to even give you something that's clip worthy on social media. I'm just done with them. At this point, I don't know how they turn this thing around. Somebody else give me something that's more coherent than my thoughts.
Here's the thing. Ted Dabrowski is one of the smartest policy people that we've seen run for governor on the Republican side in years. Right, for governor. I mean, he knows public policy. I don't agree with all of his stances. I don't agree with all of his solutions, if he even has any solutions sometimes, but he understands the issues. The problem here is that he is running a completely amateur campaign. Robocalls are in December. I mean, what is this, 2002? Were Chris and Michael even born then? I mean, it is an amateur, old school, completely untethered to the current day of politics campaign. If Ted Dabrowski wants to be taken seriously for the next 3 months, essentially 3 months to election day from yesterday as we record this, dump the grifters, bring in some pros, and start to act like a real candidate. Because right now, this campaign is not to be taken seriously. And I mean, it is Darren Bailey's race to lose. And that is of no small part to the fact that Dabrowski and Mendrick are running unserious campaigns, and Heidner's not running any campaign at all.
I want to know what vendor schmoozed Dabrowski or profed or whatever insider in the Dabrowski campaign to say, hey guys, you know what would be a great way to launch our paid outreach? A robocall. You're like, come on, man. What was I want to know, as a businessman, I want to know what the profit margin was on this robocall, because if I had to guess, Mr. Dabrowski's getting taken to the cleaners on this robocall, and he doesn't even know it. Because like Patrick said, Dabrowski's a policy guy. Dabrowski's the guy you go to when you need something written up to talk about how bad the state's finances are. And he's fantastic at that. God bless him. But when it comes to like him actually knowing, like, oh, I'm not supposed to do a robocall at all in this month of December. Yeah, I don't know. I got to tell you, it's probably one of Dan Prost's buddies probably owns a robocall company or something, or LLC or something like that. They're like, hey, you know what would be a really good way to start this campaign? Robocalls.
Well, I mean, I said this when Dabrowski was considering running. I said I've dealt with him in limited occasions in the past, back when he was at IPI, and I would agree with Patrick's his point about Dabrowski being very, very, very smart on policy. I may disagree with some of his stances, but at least he comes to them well researched and well thought out. But the challenge with Ted has always been a lack of operational and political knowledge. I mean, we dealt with on similar political efforts in Waukegan and other places, and I remember being on conference calls and listening to the guy and being like, no, 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 that's not how you do any of this. What's that old commercial? No, that's not how this works. And that was what I mean, a decade ago at this point. But clearly, it hasn't grown from there. And I think the rule in a campaign is do what you do best. I mean, clearly Ted's a policy guy, so go focus on the policy. Bring in some political people who know what they're doing, who have won a campaign at some point in their lives, and maybe you'd be seeing a different outcome. But yeah, I mean, robocalls have not been a part of our strategy. And again, we did significant numbers of them back in the day when it was a thing, and they have not been a part of our client strategies in 3, 4, 5 cycles at this point. Like this is a massive blast from the past. I'm not even sure our system's even set up to do them anymore, let alone like anyone ever thinks to do this.
2018 is the last one I remember doing it. I think that was an election day blast in a
Yeah, I mean,
primary.
you can
it's been a
listen.
while.
You can still kind of hit seniors a little bit because they're the last people out there who still have landlines that you could try to reach. And so I could see a targeted strategy where maybe you do some senior outreach in the lead up to election day. But like, and here's the thing: there are technologies out there where you just click one button and it eliminates all the cell numbers from your list. So like, it's not as if this is a difficult thing to do, where you can purge your list of cell phones. And I think someone's trying to defend it, saying that they did ring lists, which we've been doing for a long time. We've had that technology. Everyone's had that technology for a long time. But I can tell you, at least from my experience, it rang. I've got the call and the voicemail. So I don't believe, at least to me, they didn't do ring lists. Now, maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe it was ring lists to other people. But I'm pretty sure they didn't even do ring lists, which if you don't know what that is, it doesn't ring. It just leaves a voicemail, which, by the way, if you're going to do robocalls, is at least the one way to do it. But I'm pretty confident they didn't actually do that here, unless the system had a glitch. All right, let's talk about the race in general. I got some good that I can share. Since the Dabrowski campaign hates my guts, I'll at least try to balance it a little bit here. I thought the Dabrowski's tweet about Goshen, and I'll have Lane bring it up on screen, saying, that's Pritzker's hypocrisy, breaks for Chinese businesses, no breaks for ordinary Illinoisans, tying Goshen to taxing tips. That was some sign of life a little bit out of the campaign. I like the angle in that. I mean, it doesn't do any good if you don't, actually put some money behind it and put it out to voters. But the social media post on X actually, got some decent traction. And I know TMA has been kind of pushing that too. They put out a great release over the last, I think it was a week or so ago, talking about how, all this taxpayer money is being provided to Goshen while Illinois manufacturers can't seem to get any help. And in fact, the opposite. With Illinois decoupling from the federal benefits for manufacturers in the one big beautiful bill, you're seeing manufacturers get the opposite of breaks in Illinois if you're a current manufacturer. But for new manufacturers, especially companies like Goshen that are favored by Pritzker, suddenly it's $500 million you guys get. So I think there's some space there to make some ground. You got to do more with it than just a tweet, but there's some space there to make some ground. A little bit of Rick Heidner life. He had a fundraiser last Friday with the Leopardos, and Senator Bernie Moreno came in and headlined. Looks like they raised, best I can tell, about 300K around that fundraiser. So something out of Heidner. But otherwise, you look at A1s, you're still seeing a few thousand a week from Dabrowski, which, I mean, is basically state rep level fundraising. There's 10K from Bailey. So really nothing there, which, as I've been saying, my biggest concern is I want to see growth on fundraising from Darren. Yeah, the message is good, but anyone can retype a message. If you want to show us you've changed, go out and raise some money. And so far, we haven't seen that. And nothing from Mendrick. So some positives, some negatives. Any final thoughts on the race based on those updates or updates you've seen?
I mean, if Heidner is able to raise serious money, I could see him being, a dark horse in this race, considering how lackluster the other candidates have been. I mean, if he's up on TV, if he's in mailboxes with a decent message, there's probably a path, which is
Yeah,
crazy to believe. I mean, crazy to even think, considering, nobody's even seen him in person except Patrick once, and he wouldn't talk to him.
He
It tells you how
exists.
weak this field is.
you're right, Butler. But I'll push back on this because I think Heidner's donation history is so bad that the second his campaign shows any type of viability or life, like goes up on TV, puts mail in mailboxes. Who knows? The other campaigns are all just gonna descend on Hyde.
But who's
Look at
got the
this.
money to attack him? Who has the money to attack him?
But
Who can
at the,
respond? They can't respond with no money.
Yeah.
at the very least, it's going to be something that you're going to see amongst the Republican voter base, amongst
Tommy
more
Moore will
Republican
post
voters.
about it on Facebook.
The only person who's got the money at this point to respond is if J.B. Pritzker really, really, really wants to face Delmar Bailey or Bailey Delmar or whatever order you want to say those names. Like we might see, there's a possibility that Q1 sees a Rick Heidner versus J.B. Pritzker ad war and mailing war in the primary because I mean Heidner, I'm sure Pritzker wouldn't mind facing Heidner, but he'd certainly more prefer to face Bailey Delmar.
God, the mob ties ads write themselves.
Yeah. But I mean, there is a chance. There's a non-zero chance that it's basically Heidner versus Pritzker in this primary, but it's Pritzker via backing Bailey in the primary. It could get real weird, and it's
Organ
because
2.0, yeah.
Because of how absolutely weak this field is. Heidner could own the airwaves. Heidner could own mailboxes and ads, and there's not a single candidate. I mean, Dabrowski's got that million, but I mean that's going to go fast, especially if we're going to burn it on stupid stuff like robocalls. There's not really a candidate here who's going to have the money to fight back. So this thing could get real weird.
And at some point, the donors to Dabrowski are going to want to see a return on their investment. At least the intelligent ones are. Like we've been all talking about, like Dick Uihlein and how he put what was it 250,000 into Dabrowski's campaign, and people are expecting more. Do we really think Dick Uihlein is going to look into the Dabrowski campaign up until this point and be like, "Yeah, you deserve $1 million of my money," or 10 million, which would actually move the needle in this race in a significant amount? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Here's the question I would ask. In today's ad dollars, in the inflated, and remember, TV ad dollars or TV ad buys are going to be expensive with that U.S. Senate race by the time March rolls around. How much money would Heidner have to spend to own the airwaves? Right, we're talking Chicago broadcast, we're talking St. Louis broadcast. Ad mail on that. Is he going to have to dump what, 10 million, 15 million?
No, way more
Less than that?
I mean, just for broadcast, if you want to own it for, let's say, 2 months, just for broadcast, just Chicago.
2.5, really. I mean, you're going to have to start first right after
So
the first of January.
that's 15 million just right there, let alone you've got how many other broadcast media markets you're going to have to cover. You're talking about a 50 to $100 million campaign is what you're talking about.
Is he seriously going to be able to raise and put in his own money
rumor
to
is
do that?
he was going to put in that kind of money. That's the rumor.
Rumor was Bruce Rauner was going to spend 10 million or 100 million more than he did in 2018 and never did. So, I mean, it's just I'm interested to see how serious he actually acts because that campaign has not acted completely seriously yet. So, I mean, maybe they're doing a few things and they're staffing up from what I hear, but I mean, it's.
But here's the thing: the only
it's a hell of a lot of money to own the airwaves.
The only clarifying point I'll make is you don't need to go up on broadcast to win a Republican primary. That's the only clarifying point I'll make is that Republican primary voters aren't sitting there watching Wheel of Fortune at 6:59. Just to be clear. So, like, yeah, if you had that money, and based on Corrigan's history, I'm sure he wants that 15% from those ad buys. So I'm sure they're going to try to go up on broadcast. But the reality is you can dominate this field, this race in the places you need to dominate. You could do that for 20 to 25. You don't need 50 to 100. But if you want to be on broadcast, you're talking about well more than the 20 to 25 if you skip broadcast. Anyways, all right, let's move on. Last thing on politics, and we'll get into some policy stuff. Your predictions. This is our last episode for the calendar year here. We'll be skipping next week because it's Christmas. Probably skipping the week after on New Year's Day, but we haven't officially decided that yet. But certainly our last episode for 2025. So what are your predictions for 2026 for Illinois politics? What do you guys got? Have some fun with it or be serious. I don't really care. But what are your predictions?
I think on the primary side, state legislature, there's been a lot of talk on social media about primarying, incumbent state reps, Hammond, McCombie, Severin, Charlie Meyer. I think the only one that really has any validity is the Noreen Hammond one. I've heard, from some insiders and even some people that are affiliated with some of the PACs that do donate to Republicans and Democrats, that they're worried, oh my gosh, Tom DeVore has all this influence over the party and we're going to have to, spend 40 grand here and 10 grand there. I think Hammond's the one you worry about. I think the other ones should be, in good shape. I mean, that could change, but as of right now, that seems to be the field.
Yeah, we've said that before. That's the only serious race, but there's no prediction in that, Michael. Come on. Who's got an actual prediction for me here?
Pritzker wins by 15 next November.
I mean, if things continue as they're going right now, I was going to say double digits, but that's not
I mean,
really.
it was 13 and 22, and the site in the environment for Republicans is significantly worse. So, and I would say if Pritzker's numbers were better than underwater, I would say 20, but
Yeah.
I think 15 is probably a baseline at this point.
And how
My
do we do
guess is
how do we do in the legislature at this point?
I have a hard time seeing Republicans not lose multiple seats. I mean, in each chamber, I mean, the environment is, and these suburban seats are so bad for Republicans. I mean, you look at the 26th, you look at the 33rd. I think Seth Lewis is in trouble. I think you could lose three Republican seats in the Senate. You could lose five, six Republican seats in the House, maybe. If it's really bad, I think that might be a little high. I think there's probably at least three that are gone at this point. I mean, it's going to be a bloodbath if the situation remains what it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point. Like on our current trajectory, I've got us losing three ledge seats. But if it keeps getting worse, that number is going to get even worse. And I'd have a hard time disputing if our nominees, who it seems it's going to be, and they can't raise money and can't run a real race just like they did 4 years ago. In a race where we could have gotten within single digits against Pritzker with a real campaign and a real candidate, we're looking at a 15 plus point loss, which is going to kill Republicans all the way down the ballot, just like it did 4 years ago.
My prediction for 2026 is that Republicans will spend less money than they have in any cycle up until this point, even accounting for inflation. I anticipate the Republicans are going to have across all campaigns, statewide, legislative. I anticipate this is going to be a very, very cheap year for Republicans. Not a lot of money spent.
I mean, Chris, to give validity to your point, I've heard from so many people it's just a pack it in survival year and then hope you can come back in 2 and 4 years. So you might be right that ends up being what ends up happening, which would be, I mean, devastating, but it's not a bad prediction.
I mean, it all comes down to who's raising money. And, Dabrowski, he impressed all of us with 1.2, wherever the hell he raised. But come on. And part of it's the Republican Party in the state's used to having at least one money bags running around, with big cash, but I think it's going to be a lot. I think Pritzker will honestly spend less money just because he'll be going up against nobody. So maybe
he won't have to, and he's going to start saving up for the national run. So it's a little positivity. I know this is going to be self-serving, but I do genuinely believe it, even though it is self-serving. But I think Tracy and Drew are going to overperform, especially overperform the governor's race. But I think they'll overperform just in general. In this environment, I mean, winning in a state like Illinois, I understand, is going to be very, very, very difficult. But I think those are two candidates that will overperform. And to be clear, yeah, we work with both of them. But if you don't understand how core works, then you don't understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. We are very, very selective in our clientele because, frankly, I don't want to work on campaigns anymore. So the fact that we even signed on to these two races should tell you that we see at least candidates who certainly aren't going to embarrass us like some of our other candidates. 2026, amidst the sea of negativity.
If you want one ray of sunshine, I think there's one race where Republicans can overperform. I would say that's the 17th congressional. If Bickelhaupt is the nominee and kind of figures out her campaign, it's been a little bit rudderless so far, but compared to who she's in a primary against, I think is someone who would get smoked. I think Sorenson's numbers are soft, even though he overperformed Harris. Everybody overperformed Harris in 2024. I think there's an environment there where Trump doesn't kill you like he does in the suburbs. And if she figures out a message, if she can raise some money, if she maybe gets some professionals in on her side, I think that would be the maybe one race around the state where Republicans have an opportunity to surprise.
Yeah, listen, I put aisle 17 in my start district, so every thing you need to see is there in that race, other than a serious candidate. I mean, Vansel has struggled to raise money. He's gotten better, but marginally, but he's gotten better. Bickelhaupt has not put together a campaign. She has really struggled. I mean, she struggled at a recent event just answering basic questions at a forum. It's there's not enough time here. I mean, I don't want to be pooping on your parade here, but I mean, there's not a lot of time here for her to get her act together. She on paper sounds like she's got a world of potential, but it might take her 2 years to realize that. And maybe we're talking about this race for her in 2028. I don't know.
I mean, I think that we went through those rankings, and we've talked about it again and again. Some of these races that, have the potential to be in play, where our priorities should be. And I think that people are gonna, if you're a donor or you're an operative or you're HRO or Senate Republicans, you're gonna have to make those tough decisions early, especially with the amount of cash that we're gonna have, and say, okay, well, we're gonna go all in on this one, and sorry, thanks for running, but this is just not somewhere not a race we see going anywhere. And if they do like they've done in the past, where it's kind of, they flirt with something for a while, and then the last minute they cut everything, and then they're like, oh, well, then we came within 400 votes on this other district. We should have put the money there. We can't have that problem this cycle.
Yeah, no playing favorites. Let's let the data win out here. Yeah, that's for sure, Michael. I've got four predictions here that are, I mean, you guys haven't really gone much out on a limb, so let me do it for us. First one here, I predict that in the governor's race, Bailey and Del Mar will turn on each other by next fall. There's just no way this thing doesn't end up there. It's all kumbaya now, and that's fine, but Del Mar is going to get skewered for his past. You already see it happening now. And to save his base, Darren will start to subvert Aaron and say negative things about him privately and then publicly, and vice versa. Aaron wants to have a future, and so he'll start blaming Darren as you get closer and closer to the fall, and the poll numbers look awful, and they're like, well, it's Darren's fault because I'll run myself next time. I don't know how the universe plays out where those two don't end up blaming each other well before November 7th. So that's my first sort of off the wall prediction. All right, no one else wants to go in, so here we go. Here's another one. This one's probably not hard to see happening, but I'm going to say it out loud since no one else will. After losing the primary, another prediction for 2026 is Dabrowski, Ives, and Proft will publicly blame everybody but themselves for losing the race, just because that's kind of their MO. Mostly,
Is that a prediction, or is that just like basic understanding of how these people work?
Yeah, a little bit of both. But hey, you got to get a few easy predictions in there. If you want to make money off of putting bets in Vegas, you got to have a few easy bets in there. Come on. Here's another one. Kathy Selvey will be replaced, and it will be by somebody worse, because that just seems to be what we do.
This is like T-ball, Colin. Let's get a real banger
going.
Well,
what you guys aren't making any freaking predictions, so come on. If you think you're better, then make a prediction. I mean, listen, here's the thing. The problem for Republicans in the state, and the problem for Kathy in the state party chair position, is anybody who would be good at the job doesn't want it. And the only people who are angling for the job, people like Mark Shaw, who is actively right now angling for the job, would not be an improvement over what we've had in the past. So there is no way that if you replace Kathy, you're going to end up with somebody better. So it's an easy prediction, but I'm still making the prediction. Last one here, which is a topic we'll talk about shortly, but let's have some fun with it. By the end of 2026, the Bears will still not have a location for their new stadium, and they will still be making threats about how they're going to go somewhere else. Maybe this time it'll be, I don't know, rural Texas or something stupid. But by the end of next year, based on how Kevin Warren is doing such an incredible job with this process, I predict they still won't have a location for their new stadium.
I've been saying for literally years now that by the time the Bears lease runs out in 2033, I think it is, they'll still be playing at Soldier Field. The entire environment around this proposal from the start was bad. The financials for the McCaskies are bad, and Kevin Warren has only made it worse.
And I don't want anyone to miss your thoughts, Patrick. So it's our next topic. So I'll have you repeat that when we get to our next topic. Any other predictions? And then we'll talk Bears, because I think Patrick and I and maybe others really, really, really want to talk Bears. All right, you guys were lame with your predictions, but thank you for participating. All right, let's go to the next one here. Yeah, so I'm going to let Patrick have the main bulk of this rant. I'm just going to start us off with this when we talk about the Bears. When I saw this announcement that they were thinking about, or at least saying they're thinking about Northwest Indiana, I have been somebody who has gone out on a limb pushing the Bears, defending the Bears, saying I'd like to see them move. Yes, pointing to their many, many, many failures in this process. But I have been one of the few vocal defenders of the Bears and supporters of the Bears. I just want to tell you guys, you've lost me. At this point, you want to hold Indiana, go for it. Go to Indiana. You really want to play this card? You've lost me. Of all people, you have lost me at this point. You've played this game so awfully, and at this point, that is a giant middle finger to your fan base. And you got to do this on Bears Packers week for like the game that's going to determine whether or not we make the playoffs. Like this is just a giant finger in the eye, or a middle finger, or a foot up the rear end, whatever you want to describe this to Bears fans. And I'm at the point where fine. Go to Indiana. I don't care. You have completely lost me, and that's saying something. But I don't want to steal Patrick's thunder. Go ahead on your rant, Patrick.
Bears fans have been remarkably patient with this hemming and hawing over the stadium. They understand that Soldier Field is not a long-term solution in its current form. They understand that it's a pain in the butt to get there. My wife and I went to the Saints game back in November and stood in the rain waiting for a bus to get down there, where we still missed most of the first quarter just because it took us forever to get to Lakeshore Drive. The reality here is that in all of the frustration that has been coming with the incompetence of Kevin Warren and the McCaskies and the Bears administration, the team on the field this season has desperately been clawing back that good PR for the program, for the franchise. And every Bears fan right now is fired up. They are in love with this team. Ben Johnson's our guy, shirtless and all, good, better, best. And then Kevin Warren has to go out there and stick his foot in his goddamn mouth right before the playoffs, right before Bears Packers, and it continues to make the franchise look like a complete laughingstock. This is the most incompetent franchise in the city. And that's saying something, because Reinsdorf still owns the White Sox and the Bulls. And the Cubs still refuse to spend any money on free agents.
Yeah.
That alone should tell you how bad things are. The Bears are in a really difficult position, right? Because the McCaskies aren't Stan Kroenke. They don't have $10 billion sitting around to go build their own SoFi Stadium. So they feel like they need the tax help to go out to build in Arlington Heights. But state lawmakers and the governor, I will give credit to here, is saying, I don't think we should give this private business that's worth almost $10 billion on paper help on the backs of local governments, of school districts, of cities and of state roads to go build this megalopolis out in Arlington Heights. Or when they had this harebrained, let's renovate on the lakefront, they forgot about Friends of the Park. They said, hey, Brandon Johnson, we want you on our side, and we know you don't have any money, so we don't want anything from you. We just want $1.5 billion from the state, who doesn't have it either. This is so insulting and so stupid, and all the Bears had to say through this, and I think this comes down to Kevin Warren not having a freaking clue how to handle the politics of this, because I know they're lobbyists. They have really good lobbyists who have completely lost the legislature. There is nothing that will happen in Springfield for the Bears anytime soon. They have completely lost the mark, so they need to find the money on their own. Go find some private equity. Go find, see if Pat Ryan wants to build the stadium himself. Maybe JB Pritzker has some money in his couch cushions to get the stadium named after him, the Pritzker Dome. This ain't happening with the state. And to this point, those of us who have continued to root for this franchise, root for the best for this stadium situation, to float the idea of going to Gary or next to the damn casino in Hammond.
Yeah.
Go to Gary. I effing dare you.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Honestly, the moment I read that, I said, I just said to myself, just go after yourself. I'm done. I'm done with you. Like literally to an Illinoisan, the last thing that you can do, the worst thing you can do is say, oh, we're considering Indiana. Like to not understand. I guess the
Go
only
to
worst thing,
Kenosha. I don't care.
the only worst thing you could have said is we're going to go to Kenosha or go to Wisconsin. Like to say that to not understand the feelings of Illinoisans, it just goes, as you said, Patrick, it goes to not understanding how Springfield works. Like clearly they have just been bumbling around like a bunch of idiots who don't care how anybody else thinks and go, we're the Bears, which is kind of how they approach things, by the way. Like we're the
That's
Bears.
how it worked in
Everyone's
2002. So they thought it would work that
everything
way
we
again.
want, you're going to do. And I've heard the same thing that you've heard, Patrick, that their lobbyists are top notch and they've been given their marching orders. You are supposed to do X from the top. You're only allowed to do these things, and they've been set up to fail. And go. No surprise. Look, they failed. But I've also seen they have promised to invest in legislative races to try to get more favorable legislators down in Springfield, and they haven't even done that. Like, and so even getting involved politically in the last cycle, they made a bunch of promises and then never came through. So it has been failure after failure, both publicly and privately. And to poke me in the eye and us in the eye and say we might go to Hammond, Indiana, fine. See you later. I'm done. Go.
Step one to regaining trust in Springfield is firing Kevin Warren.
Yeah.
This
there's no
this
path.
is his fault.
Yeah,
This whole
no path
PR
to getting this
disaster
done.
is his fault.
Yeah. There's no path to getting this done without doing that. Especially when, like, we finally have a coach we can believe in. We finally have a GM who has some idea what he's doing. We've got a team on the field that's showing some signs of life. Like, there's a reason to be positive, but it seems like someone had a timeline on Twitter, and I wish I had saved it, where it was like every time there was a big game or a positive moment, Warren came out with some stupid letter. Like, this is not the first time he's done this season. It's the fourth or fifth time he's done this season. Like, if we make the playoffs just before the first playoff game, there'll be another stupid letter that now they're considering Missouri or something stupid. Like, I don't know what the hell they're thinking, but they've lost me. And it looks like they've lost a heck of a lot of people if you scroll through social media. Chris, no gloating from you.
No, but let Butler go. He's a Rams fan. Let him get the licks in first.
I mean, when I saw the article about, oh, we're considering Indiana, I just saw that as like an act of desperation, right? Like, give us what we're asking for. We're crossing, the state line. We'll go to Indiana. I think most people are probably, like, all right, see you later. Get out of here. I mean, that's what the Rams did to us, right? I mean, it was St. Louis, Missouri. It was Missouri that was dealing with the same problem, where they're like, we demand a new stadium. Missouri said no, so they went to Los Angeles. Now we're all Chiefs fans. So it's like, you can leave if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and let's be real, they're not going anywhere. I mean, they are a marquee franchise. Like, they can't go anywhere. So this threat, like, there's not a single person I've seen who takes this at all seriously. That's what I don't think Kevin Warren seems to understand. Not a single person has taken any of these threats seriously.
I've been saying for years, Collin, that by the time the Bears lease ends in 2033, the Bears will still be playing at Soldier Field because they have never had a plan from the start. They don't have the independent financial resources to build the stadium on their own, and clearly the incompetence from the franchise itself over the last couple of years now has just hammered my point home.
Well, and now thanks to the Bears, what was Arlington Park is probably going to be just rows of condos or something stupid. So thank you very much, Chicago Bears.
Section 8 housing.
Yeah, really, a spot that means a lot to many of us in the Northwest suburbs. Like, it's another thing they don't seem to have gotten. Like, Arlington Park had some people, obviously my family's history with it, and Abby and I getting married there. Maybe we feel it a little more than most, but that's a pretty special location for many people in the Northwest suburbs. And so, honestly, it's a little bit of like, you're crapping on that too. You ripped down Arlington Park, and now you're gonna just throw a bunch of condos up in there because you can't build a stadium and you can't figure this out. Like, it's disrespectful to the Northwest suburbs too.
And different topic, and you're going to replace what the beauty of Arlington Park, which was an awesome facility, with a Racino in Decatur. Right on, guys.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Chris, do it fast because we got to move on.
I've talked to a lot of people about this, and the funniest thing I saw about this was the Michigan City, Indiana, Chicago Bears. And that just brought absolute joy to my heart. Listen, I'm a Packers fan, but even I will admit that the idea of Bears moving to Arlington Heights made a lot of sense. And it shouldn't be that hard to buy a piece of property and say, okay, we have this piece of property. We're going to build a stadium on it now. Yeah. How difficult is it to do those two things? But the Bears apparently are living in this world where the state of Illinois simultaneously has enough money to give them whatever they want and also cares what they want.
Well,
And
the hardest part with the mega project deal that they're trying to get is that it isn't necessarily screwing the state; it's screwing school districts and cities and the county and the road districts around there. They're the ones that are going to take the hit on property taxes, not the state. I mean, it's a terrible local deal to pass that mega projects bill.
Well, I think it's probably something we'll have to talk about next year, but let me move us along now. We don't have a ton of time for policy, but we're going to get into a few. I know the Illinoize, if you don't subscribe, you probably should, has talked about this transit bill that Pritzker has signed. We obviously have talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast, so I don't necessarily want to repeat myself too much, but I do want to give Patrick a chance to talk about this. Obviously, Pritzker signed this since the last time that we've hosted one of these podcasts, and we have talked about it repeatedly. If you're a Republican in this state, if you're a conservative in this state, you absolutely need to be talking about this, the impact that this will have, whether it was the increased sales tax if you're in the Chicagoland area, the increased tolls, or raiding the road fund for downstate. There's a lot here that you absolutely need to be utilizing. And I know, Patrick, you're going to hate it when I say this, but kudos to John Curran, Senate Republicans. He came out with a strong statement finally on something. And he came out with a strong statement on this, talking about how it was a Chicago takeover of suburban mass transit, called it a bailout for Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, paid for by suburban taxpayers. It's going to make life even more expensive for suburban families with tax hikes and surcharges. It's going to reduce suburban representation on transit decisions. All of this is true. And my focus, because I live in the suburbs and I'm mostly focused on the suburbs, is the detrimental impact yet again this is going to have on the suburbs, because we keep getting crapped on in the suburbs. Patrick, I know you've been pretty vocal over the last week about the downstate impact, so I want to give you a chance to jump in and give your thoughts here.
Yeah, and I get that this isn't new, right? I mean, they passed the bill in October. We knew that the rating of the road fund was there, and if the governor would have come up and said, "Hey, listen, we had to make some really hard choices to make sure that there wasn't a catastrophe in parts of our state," and I wouldn't have agreed with him, but I would have understood. The fact that they are being so shameless, so passé, in the fact that they just blatantly stole money from roads and bridges downstate bothers the hell out of me. Right. And maybe it's just the fact that the supermajority Democrats are mostly north of I-80 and they just don't give a damn of anything south of I-80. But rating the motor fuel sales tax. Remember, you're double taxed on gasoline in the state. You've got that 47-cent motor fuel tax, and you've got that 6.25% sales tax on top of it. They're rating that 6.25% that goes to roads and bridges throughout the state to a tune of $860 million a year. They are taking that and go, not for roads and bridges anymore. We are taking that money and giving it to mass transit, 85% to Chicago, 15% to downstate. So Springfield mass transit, Champaign-Urbana mass transit, Peoria, whoever, they get 15% of what's left. So of that 860 million, there's a deal that's been going on for decades, right? That of those road fund dollars, 55% gets spent downstate, 45 gets spent in the northeastern corner of the state, just because there's such a higher concentration of roads. So you're talking roughly $470 million of money that was designated by law to downstate roads and bridges that's now just going to Chicago to bail out Brandon Johnson and his failing ass CTA, right? Now, maybe this money will go to good use. Maybe CTA trains are going to show up on time. Maybe they're not going to smell like weed and urine anymore, but you are robbing downstate to bail out the failing CTA, and that is a huge problem with me. And the fact that you're not asking users of CTA to pay any more into the system boggles my freaking mind. Add on top of that, suburbanites are paying a disproportionate amount of this bailout as well, because in your 1.25% RTA sales tax, double the amount of people paying it live in the suburbs compared to who lives in the city. So twice the amount of money is going to come from the suburbs, which is mostly going to go to bail out
And we paid
CTA.
pretty much all the tolls.
Which by the way, nobody asked for. Local 150 didn't even ask for it. They just got it to pay them off. This is literal highway robbery.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't even have, because of the financial implications, haven't really had time in the public space to talk about what Curran brought up in his quote, which is the governance structure. I mean, you have seen control over Metra and Pace specifically get ripped away and handed to Pritzker and Preckwinkle, and a little bit Johnson, and then he gave up a little bit of CTA control in exchange. But you've got the counties, the counties throughout the Chicagoland region, the areas that are serviced by the RTA or now the NITA, are completely losing representation on this board. So you're going to pay more money into a system where you've lost all your representation essentially. Like, that's the solution here. That's the reform here. Like, you're going to come up with the worst possible deal for taxpayers, especially in the suburbs and respectfully downstate. This is that deal.
One thing, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but I've really been seeing it over the course of my vacation, scrolling through Twitter, is a lot of these transit-focused X accounts, Twitter accounts, whatever you want to call them, they're really hyping up the money that's being given to, like, to look into Amtrak expansion to the Quad Cities, or to look into doing a mass transit system in insert county here. There's so much money that's going into studies, and a lot of these urbanite-focused transit think tanks are like propping this up as a victory. Look at what the state of Illinois is doing for mass transit. We're going to think about looking into the conversation about actually putting some money into transportation into downstate. And that is absolutely ridiculous how they are changing that narrative on itself. It's like, listen, we robbed Peter to pay Paul here, but look at all this money we're thinking about maybe giving Peter as recompense. Like, come on, man. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Well, you look through the bill, and I have the unfortunate whatever of having read a lot of that bill. That's what the whole bill is, Chris. I mean, even on the safety stuff, I keep hearing all the massive improvements. This is going to be led to safety. It's like you created essentially a commission, and they're going to come up with a plan at some point. At this point, we're talking about 2 years from now, by the time they actually have funding. Like, as much as, the federal government tends to, screw as much up as they possibly can, I like that they're coming in saying, guess what, CTA, show us how you're going to make things safer now. Because the answer from Brandon Johnson being, I don't need a letter to tell me what to do. Yeah, actually, you kind of do. And the response from Pritzker of, oh, we passed this bill, it's going to be fixed. Like, no, actually, even Facts has pointed to the fact that it's going to be several years before you see any of those improvements, because first they got to start to collect the money, and then the money comes in, then they figure out a way to spend it. You're a couple of years away from any improvements coming out of this bill when it comes to safety or anything else. Like, there's most of the bill is we're going to have a commission or a committee who's going to think about doing something, and we're going to give them a bunch of money to do it. That's the Illinois way, but someone at some point just needs to completely rip apart the state budget and tell us how much money is being spent by various NGOs and nonprofits and other groups who are, thinking about doing something, and then they just spend all their time posting on social media and going to Pritzker's press conferences saying how great he is. Because I got to imagine it's a lot of money.
It's the entire definition of intersect Illinois.
Yeah. And frankly, many of our statewide associations were supposed to be advocating for businesses, and instead spend all their time saying how great Pritzker is, because they get millions, so I don't want to screw that up. Anyways, we've gotten ourselves in trouble enough, so let's move on. Again, another policy topic we won't spend a ton of time on, but there's a new report released by 3 different state agencies who have told us something that's groundbreaking. Just be ready for this. None of you have ever heard this before. None of you would expect what you're about to hear. This state report has said there's going to be electricity shortages in Illinois starting in 2029. Did it blow your mind? Is that the first time you've heard this to my panel and to my audience? Yeah, probably not. But groundbreaking breaking report from the state of Illinois that says what we've been saying for years, that by 2029, in ComEd and PJM, in 2030 in ComEd territory, in 2031 through 35 in Ameren territory, Illinois is going to be facing shortages for electricity, and we're going to be importing our energy instead of exporting our energy. I will give credit to one of those statewide business associations that sometimes drives me crazy. Illinois Manufacturers Association did come out with a good quote on this. They said, we didn't need a 222 page report to tell us what we already know. Illinois is facing an energy crisis resulting from the forced closure of dispatchable baseload generation and growing demand. We've been saying this for a very, very, very long time, that you close power generators, you vastly increase demand because of data centers and quantum and everything else. And look, surprising, we're going to have shortages, and it's going to be your taxpayers, your ratepayers who are going to pay that price. Working families, small businesses, manufacturers, they're the ones who are going to pay this price because the problem is only going to get worse. I just want to give you one example of this. So in Sangamon County, Patrick, in your coverage region for your radio show, they've got a big fight over a data center. And I'm not going to wade into that fight. I don't know enough to do so. I just want to point to one thing here. The data center that they're trying to bring into Sangamon County, according to reports, will need 632 megawatts of electricity. And the people who are pushing this are saying, that's not a big deal. We can just put that on the power grid. We've got that. How much is 632 megawatts of electricity? Well, Springfield City Water, Light, and Power Department, their CWLP, generates 354 megawatts total in electricity. So this one data center will require almost double what CWLP produces for that entire region. But we were saying, oh, not a big deal. We'll just toss it on the grid. Everything's fine. That is why we are in this problem in the first place.
It's actually not what they'll do. They'll plug that into the solar farm, which is literally next door, which is going to decrease that base load need significantly. So it's not 650, it's significantly less. But I understand your point.
My point is simply, when we talk about why we're here in this mess in the first place, the amount of energy required, because as I said, I don't know, clearly, Patrick, you know a lot more about this. I'm not for or against that data center. I simply want to point out, because a whole bunch of people lately have been saying we couldn't have predicted this, whether it's Pritzker's biggest defenders and supporters at Capital Facts, or a lot of, Bill Cunningham and others. We never could have predicted this. No, BS. A lot of us have been saying this for years. Go back to FIJA, go back to CIJA, let alone SERJA. We have been saying that this problem, we were going to be here for years. Stop with the BS that, no, we couldn't have predicted this. One data center is going to require double what CWLP produces for the entire region. Again, I know that's not how they're going to plug it in, but that's how much power these data centers chew up, let alone the water they utilize, the aluminum that they utilize, and everything else. This idea you could just open up a bunch of them. Illinois has over 200 data centers now. We're, I think, fifth in the country, I believe now. There's 222 of these things at various sizes. You think you're just going to pop those on the grid and prices aren't going to go up? Like, common sense said this was going to happen, but everyone's letting all... Sorry, Patrick, but the media's letting Pritzker get away with this. Oh, we could never have predicted. BS. Bogus. And I know you have called them out, Patrick, but most of the media has not. This was obvious we were going to be here.
Well, I think, somebody's going to have to be an adult here, because there's two things that are conflicting, right? You have the desire for data centers, which I think are, a good asset to a community. They provide a lot of high-paying jobs, so you want those. But then you've got the contrasting point of, well, what's that going to do to our energy grid? What's that going to do to energy prices? You see these bills coming through Springfield, like CIJA, that made things worse. Like, they're actively making things worse from a production standpoint, and then they want to bring in data centers on top of it. Those two things are contradictory. We're gonna have to, cooler heads are gonna have to prevail here. Somebody's gonna have to make a decision.
Well, the reality is, even in most of these reports, what we see is that a lot of people are pointing to natural gas as the solution, because you need something to bridge to these clean solutions in the future. Whether it's, listen, we've talked about the need for more nuclear generators and nuclear power in the state, but that takes a decade plus to get online, if not longer. And so you need something to bridge the gap, whether it is nuclear or other clean sources of energy. We don't have something bridging that gap right now. If you're going to close all your coal plants, all your gas plants, all your oil/gas plants, depending on how they generate their power, you close all those, we're screwed, which is what we're doing right now. And so a lot of people are pointing to your bridge solution is natural gas because people don't realize that natural gas is the main reason why the US has significantly reduced our greenhouse gas emissions. The transition from coal to natural gas has cut by 50% the pollutants that we put in the air when we produce our power. That's huge. And so we've got plenty of natural gas producers in this state. I think 2/3 of our non-nuclear plants in this state are natural gas based, if I'm remembering that correctly. There, you've got an opportunity here to bridge the gap with cleaner, yes, still fossil fuel, but cleaner solutions. And all of the above approaches we've been saying for a long time now is the solution. But if you're not willing to do that, then stop bringing data centers in. Because Michael, I would challenge that. I am pro business as it gets. But the idea we're just going to keep putting more and more and more and more data centers in here and put our head in the sand, no, we can't. Figure out our energy problem or stop bringing in data centers. You cannot continue to put your head in the sand and say, no, we're going to close power plants, but we're also going to crazily ramp up demand, because who is that going to screw? It's going to screw working families and the small businesses who are currently here, and we cannot afford it. So, Michael, in a perfect world, we are common sense on energy, and then that allows us to bring in more data centers. But if you're not going to do this, then stop doing this.
That's what I'm saying. Why can't we do both? That's what we should be
One
doing.
would think it's common sense, but it's Illinois.
You do know that the General Assembly had the ability during the veto session, as all of these talks about energy were happening, to do things that would have helped people reduce their energy bills. That was the message that many Democrats I talked to were pushing leading into the veto session. And instead, they buried their heads in the sand. They passed a bill that said, oh, okay, we're going to do some you can reduce your out, or you can reduce your consumption incentives, and then we're going to have these batteries that you're going to pay for, and your bill's going to go up even more than it already is anyway. Collin, I know you and we talked about this during the summer, how much our energy bills went through the roof. And I mean, Chris doesn't have to worry about that living in his mom's basement, but the reality is that we are representative of what consumers all around this state dealt with all summer long. And usually Democrats in this state at least have the understanding of when bad stuff is happening, somebody at least tries to go to fix it instead of make the problem worse. Some would argue that they usually make the problem worse with their solution, but somebody would have had to have done something this fall. You would have thought somebody would do something this fall, and they didn't. And now I think JB Pritzker is going to see the writing on the wall in 2026 of how bad this issue could be for him, especially if we're seeing people with Ameren bills and ComEd bills in the thousands again in 2026. I would bet you that he's going to tell his environmental friends to quiet down for a couple of years and let me go incentivize these natural gas plants to ramp up production so that we don't have to go and try and blame these anonymous PJM and MISO grid people that doesn't resonate with anyone. He can actually go out and use as a campaign issue. We went out to the natural gas companies and said, you do this, this, and this to clean up your output, you clean up what you're doing and increase baseload consumption. Let's see if he's playing his cards right in 2026 to be able to go out and do that, because I think that's one of those things that he takes into a presidential race and says, hey, look at me. I was able to buck my party and went out and lowered energy costs for people by increasing production. Or is he just going to continue to sit back and say, siege is the law. We want more wind and solar. Good luck, everybody. Because it's not my power bill that I have to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's, I mean, again, I'm about local control, but the feds are, again, saying to step in. And it's yet another situation where maybe they have to. I mean, there's a bill passed in the House. I saw Don Tracy talking about this, and I'm trying to pull it up, and I'm missing, and I'm not going to get it in time. But basically, there was a bill that passed the House that gave FERC, the Federal Regulatory Commission, the ability to say, you know what, actually, you can't close that plant because it's going to create problems all throughout the region. It'll probably die in the Senate, I'm sure, but like that's how bad it is that you might need federal action here because blue states like Illinois are screwing this up as badly as they are. So I don't know. All right, we're gonna have to skip the next topic, but Patrick, I know you want to talk about it. If you want to bring it up during clowns and OGs, feel free. But we're gonna be over time as it is. I want to end this before we finish off with our final segments. I want to end with good news. I know this is hard, but I'm just so much negativity on this podcast, and I know it's my fault, but on the news and everywhere. This being our last podcast of the year, could we please have our final topic be just something positive? I know it's hard. But just what do you guys got? Give me something positive. Chris, I know you spent a good amount of time on your vacation coming up with something.
I did, Colin, and again, you'll be invoiced for this time, or taken to court on it, your choice. You know me, I'm the pessimist on this show. I tell you guys every week it's doomed, it's over. So I did take a lot of time to think about this, and ultimately I decided to go back to the one thing I was partially involved in because that was the first thing that came back to my mind is that the Will County Board finally did not shut down. This is a couple weeks ago. Will County Board did not end up shutting down. They were able to end with a 0% levy for 2026 fiscal year. They were able to do that by moving some money around in surplus reserves. They had more money in reserves than they were supposed to. So, Will County residents, you are not going to be seeing a tax increase from the Will County government this upcoming year. It's still early. We don't know what the Democrats are going to use this with their back pocket, but positive. Will County Republicans plus one Democrat were able to push through here and avoid a government shutdown. So there's your positive.
There you go. I'll take whatever I can get. I got a few, but I figure I'll let you guys go first. Michael, Patrick, I mean, Michael, come on, man. You're my optimist. What do you got?
There was one story that I saw, CNN 2025 Hero of the Year is actually a resident of Chicago. It's a couple, their last names are the Blackwells, and they started a nonprofit to create or turn vacant lots into gardens, flowers, and vegetables. And they're going to get a big $100,000 donation to their nonprofit. So doing good work in Chicago, which should be recognized, I think, by more than just CNN.
All right. That's cool. I'll take it. Nothing, Pfingsten? You got nothing for me?
Here's what I'll say. I probably spend more time at the state house than any of you guys, and I certainly deal with the Republicans and the Democrats there, and deal with Republicans and Democrats day in and day out, and certainly there is a belief among people who are pissed about what's happening in the state around the country, that just everybody sucks, and I both parties suck is kind of one of my key beliefs at this point. But if you look at the way government operates, Republicans and Democrats, elected officials, staffers, agency folks, they are in general very decent, committed people who are trying to make life better. The jerks and the scoundrels are far fewer than the people who are actually trying to make positive change on either side. And we on the center right to the right disagree with the party in charge, and that's how it's going to be. But even on that side, they're doing things that they believe help people, help the state, help constituencies. And I think that we should go into this with an understanding that even if we disagree with people, I fight with Cam Buckner all the time because he and I just don't agree on politics at all. But I know Cam Buckner to be a damn good guy, and I've known him for years, and I think that I think if we all take a step back and understand that the other side is coming at an issue generally with the best of intentions, that maybe we wouldn't hate each other just so much.
Well, I can get on board with that. All right, let me give mine and then we'll get to our final couple segments here. So, a couple things that I like to talk about, and it seems to get surprised reactions from a lot of people because this information just is never put out there. Let's start here because I never hear Republicans or conservatives talk about this, about how more people have been lifted out of poverty by capitalism or the free market than any other system, economic system, or government system. People don't realize just how much. In 1820, 94% of the world's population was living in extreme poverty. By 1910, it was 82%. By 1950, it was 72. The fastest decline, though, has occurred since 1981, where we're now down to 8% of the world's population living in extreme poverty. And I'm not going to say that capitalism is perfect because we've got some problems, certainly when it comes to wealth disparity and other things. We definitely have some problems, but we never focus enough on the positives that come with it, the millions of lives, hundreds of millions of lives that are changed. Between 1990 and 2015 alone, 1.25 billion people around the world escaped poverty, 50 million a year. That's something we should be celebrating. This is good news. What does that lead to? Since 1947, let's talk about malnutrition. So in 1947, half the world's population was undernourished. It's now 9% today. Life expectancy in 1900 it was 31 years worldwide. It's now 73. Here's a crazy thing. The probability that a child born today will reach retirement age is higher than the probability of previous generations ever celebrating their fifth birthday. That blows my mind. There's a lot of good happening in the world. And yeah, we got problems too, but I think we get so focused on the problems, we forget to look at actually there is significant improvement being made. Here's my second thing. We talk about the need to protect this planet because we only got one of them. So whether you're Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, climate change believer, climate change denier, I don't really care. I think we could all agree with is that we better take care of the one planet we have. And guess what? To some degree, that's actually happening. In the US, our emissions have dropped 17.4% since 2005. That's a significant drop. And in fact, what you've seen is huge changes in the power sector with a 41% reduction. And it looks like based on current projections, it's going to drop by 30% by 2030, up to 50% by 2035. That's positive. Yeah, we got work to do, but real change is happening. I'm going to have Lane bring up a graph. You can see that North America's carbon emissions have been dropping significantly since 2010. And by the way, other than Europe, we're the only place that's happening in the world. Look at Asia and South Pacific. I mean, we need to make progress in the rest of the world, but let's for once actually celebrate the good that we're doing here in America and in North America. There's good being done. Last thing here, this one's for my wife. When we talk about, she's an animal lover, so I'll share some stats on work that's been done to conserve and protect animal life in this planet. Humpback whales, there was only 1,400 of them left in 1960. There's 135,000 today. Bald eagles, we were down to 410 of them in 1963. We're now over 300,000 of them today. White rhinos, there was 100 of them in 1940. There's 18,000 today. Last one, anybody who knows me knows I love buffalo. American bison, there were only 325 of them left in 1900. There's 500,000 today. Positive things are happening in this world, and it'd be nice if every once in a while we could focus on them. So that's my good news that I'd share. There is some good happening on this planet. Yeah, we got some work to do, but come on. It's okay to focus on the good that we've done as humans. All right, with that, let's go to our last couple segments, our news you can use. There's a lot here, so I'm going to do it fast. Y'all know I talk fast. Let's see what we can do here. So we're going to do 4 different maps all in a row because these all popped up within like a day of each other in my phone. So I figured let's share them here. Number 1, the cost of college in the country. You can see it on this map. Guess what? Illinois is 5th highest in the entire country at 61.9%. That's the percentage of household income that has to be spent to afford college. And by far the highest in the entire Midwest. Let me do all 4 in a row, and then if anyone has thoughts, feel free. Next one here, gas prices. Illinois, again, Shocker. Highest by far in the Midwest. We're the 10th highest in the whole country. That sure surprises a lot of you. Let's go here. Real purchasing power of $100 by every state. Illinois is not doing awful. We're only the 33rd best, or what would that be? 33rd worst. I don't know how to word that. But anyways, not awful here, but not the worst. But of course, we're the worst in the Midwest. You see on this map, every other state, $100 goes way further than it does in Illinois. Last one here, home ownership rates in Illinois. Yet again, here we go. Worst in the Midwest. Here's a crazy stat. Nearly 60% of baby boomers owned homes by the age of 33. Only 40% of millennials have hit that mark by the same age. Illinois is tied for worst in the entire Midwest in this, and we see it all the time. So, any quick thoughts on four more stats this week where Illinois is at least worse in the Midwest, if not among the worst in the country?
I would just say politically, Republicans had a lane here to attack on cost of living, attack on affordability, and they've missed that pitch. And I think Democrats are going to steal that issue and make it all a Trump issue in 2026.
Yep, you're not wrong. Next one here, the OEIG has released its annual report for 2025, and it shows a jump of 29% in complaints against state employees under Pritzker. Yet another thing, it seems like every week we're talking about more and more problems in the Pritzker administration, whether it's because he's just so hyper-focused on politics or what. Whatever's leading to it, we continue to have serious problems in the Pritzker administration. Nobody seems to care. Moving along. This one's in the weeds, but I'm going to try my best to make it real simple. But essentially, a federal judge has ruled that the tax sale system in Cook County in Illinois is unconstitutional. It's been ruled unconstitutional in all states, but 49 other states have moved away from this. Illinois is the only one who continues to do this. Injustice Watch has a great report on this. I encourage you to look it up. But here's what happens here. When a home is in foreclosure in Cook County, that home is bought up and sold, and the money goes to pay off the government and then all these other people who invested in buying up that home. The person who actually owned it, who had equity in the house, doesn't get any of that equity back. The federal government, the Supreme Court, has said, hold on a second, whatever they need to contribute to pay off their government debts, yes, of course, government should take that money, but then the rest of that equity is theirs. They should get it back. 49 other states agree, but wouldn't you know it, Illinois and especially Cook County, they want their money. So here we go, yet another situation where in a state like Illinois that pretends to care about lower income communities and pretends to care about working class households proves that it's not based on their policy. When you look at these homes, and Justice Watch did this report, they found that most of these properties were in black communities like Roseland and Inglewood and Chicago Heights. And more than half of these homes that were taken, the debt was $1,600 or less. So we're not talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of debt. And as a matter of fact, they started out as low as $200 in debt, and then their home was taken away from them.
By the way, it's not homes in foreclosure. It's homes that are behind on their property tax bills.
Correct. I may have said that wrong, so thank you for clarifying if I did. Last thing that I'll say here, when you look at the tax records, the debt that was owed in Cook County at the homes they looked at was $2.3 million. Those homes had a combined estimated market value of $108 million. That's the disparity of what the homes were worth versus what the taxes were owed on those homes. This is something Republicans should be talking about because it's Cook County, it's Democrat-controlled Cook County, it's Illinois. There's plenty of quotes in these articles where Illinois had a chance to do something, but Pritzker was silent on the issue and refused. This is something Republicans and conservatives should be using, and I don't hear anybody talking about it because it is confusing, but still, we should find a way to utilize it. All right, next one here. This one's just one of those things that seems like only Collin ever cares about or brings up, but I'm going to do it anyways. I don't care. Because we have seen story after story of situations where Illinois has tried to find ways to dump their costs on the federal government. And then when the federal government says, you know what, we can't afford all this anymore, we're going to make cuts, they disproportionately hurt Illinois because we were finding whether it was loopholes or other ways to dump our costs on the federal government. Of course, those cuts are going to hurt us more. We saw this with healthcare when we were using a loophole to tax hospitals and then recoup that money and give it back to the hospitals. We see it here with the EPA. There was a story on, I don't know why I keep bringing them up this week, but there was a story on Capitol Facts. Nobody else seemed to run it. But the Illinois EPA was talking about how, well, it's been so awful, we've had to make so many cuts, and then now the Trump administration's making even more cuts. The takeaway takeaway for me was that the Illinois EPA was sixth in the nation for the percentage of their staff that they've cut. 20% or 194 full-time positions. And when asked what the reasoning was, they said, well, these are things the federal government can handle. So now when the federal government's like, well, you know what, we actually can't afford to do all this stuff, you see these same people are up in arms. I can't believe that Trump's making these cuts. Well, Republicans are making these cuts. It's like, hold on a second. You've been making these cuts since 2010, but you just figured, hey, the federal government will pick up the slack. Well, now that they're not picking up the slack, you can't blame them for the fact that you didn't fund this. I mean, of course they will and whatever, but it's just part of the hypocrisy that drives me crazy in Illinois.
Can I just point out that the Illinois EPA spent $80 million to rehab a portion of White Oaks Mall in Springfield for their new headquarters?
No, there you go. Well, they find the money when they need it for things they want, right? All right, I posted this on my social media. I just want to give a shout out to Jim Nolan. He had a great op-ed in the Chicago Tribune about something we've been talking about already, so I don't need to get into it too much. But if you get a chance to read it, go in the Chicago Tribune, look for it. It's titled "Illinois Educators Are Applauding Weak School Achievement." And the thing I want to point you to is this comparison to Asian schools and especially the Chinese educational system. It was enlightening for me because, frankly, I don't know much about their education system other than the fact that they constantly kick our butts. And so I encourage you to check out that op-ed. It emphasized to me just what I've been saying, that this epidemic of low expectations we have in education in this country, but especially in Illinois, is not okay. Lowering standards so you can pat yourself on the back and say we graduated more kids just does them a disservice. Let's start to expect more of ourselves. Let's start to expect more of our students. I have put my money where my mouth is on this and investing in schools and trying to improve our schools. And so I'll be there with you to back you up, but stop lowering the bar. It only hurts our kids. All right, next one here. Story popped up in the Chicago Tribune that I found kind of interesting, that there was a shooting in Berwyn of an assistant principal, and the individual who conducted that shooting, who did that crime, had their firearm license revoked by the Illinois State Police. And if you look through that story going back to 2009, there's actually almost 110,000 Illinois residents who have lost their right to own guns, but a backlog of nearly 75,000 of them, or 70%, the state has no idea whether or not they've actually given up their guns. Like, this is what we hear all the time from people like Ed Sullivan, our friend who lobbies for the ISRA. He says, listen, we understand there's something that needs to be done and changes that need to be made, but you need to implement the current laws first. We're talking about 75,000 people who have been deemed not okay to own a firearm, and Pritzker's Illinois State Police has no idea if they own a firearm. And it led to one shooting here in Berwyn. I'm sure it has led to others, and I'm sure it will lead to more. Hey, maybe do something about this if you actually care about those shootings that you say you're going to do something about instead of thoughts and prayers. Here's something you could actually do. Last one here. This is why outlets like Smoke-Filled Room and the Illinoize and people like Chris Jackowiak and Collin Corbett and Patrick Pfingsten talk a lot about the need to actually build relationships with unions. Illinois unions, especially government unions, spend the most on politics in the entire country, ahead of California, New York, and every other state, ahead of Washington, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. By far, the highest amount of spending on politics by government unions is right here in Illinois. So when we talk about the need to build relationships with unions, we kind of know what we're talking about. This is one of the strongest union states in the entire country. Now, on the other side of that coin, to my union friends, you got to maybe actually be a little bit more bipartisan, because people like me and Chris struggle to get the Republican Party to want to work with you, when in this same study, there's a chart I'll have Lane bring up here in post. 95.4% of the spending went to Democrats. Only 4.6% went to Republicans. Yes, the Republican Party has more work to do if they ever want to see some of this money. But to some of these unions, I have a real hard time convincing those Republicans to work with you when they know even if they work with you, you're going to fund their opponent. So you're going to have to find a way to meet in the middle, please. Chris, any quick thoughts?
I think you described it pretty well, Colin. It's concerning the way that some of the infrastructure in some of these government unions have gone recently with the direction the AFL-CIO has taken. But I agree. I think a lot of Republicans don't think that it's possible to get labor support. It's like we talked about earlier. The Democrats have all the unions, so why would I ever do anything to help the unions? Well, maybe if you actually reach out and have a conversation, you might find that you agree on more things than you think. Just saying.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our final segment here. OG Clown of the Week. Let's have some fun with it. What do you guys got?
I have to give an OG to Bill Pullman because I saw an article on
Buddy Bill.
Patch earlier this week that he released a children's book called The Fox in the Yard, based on some of the stories that he told his kids when they were growing up and his grandkids today. So I thought that was a cool story.
Lane, if you could find that and bring that up in post, let's give Bill a little love here. Good one, Michael. I like that.
Here's my abbreviated. Unless Butler, you have clowns you want to go over, but
Go
like,
for it, Chris. Go ahead. There's no
Yeah.
rules.
okay. My clowns of the week are Paul Vallis. After 2.5 years of this stupid lawsuit where he got ripped off for $700,000 by someone who all he did was put up campaign signs for him. In the end, the judge actually ruled with the guy who took $700,000 from them. So all the while, people still haven't gotten paid from Vallis's campaign. Certain influencers still are on the till for bar tabs and everything from that campaign. Paul Vallis now is not going to get any of that $700,000 back. Oops. So Paul Vallis, clown of the week. Hopefully you don't run for mayor again. If you do, you're a joke. Number two, JB Pritzker. I got to give Collin credit. He was right. He was right. I was wrong. JB Pritzker ended up signing the assisted suicide bill because we can't have anything good in this life. The Democratic Party will never move to a moderate position on any social issues. It'll be abortions and death and whatever Pat Brady and his friends want, they're going to get. So, JB Pritzker, you are the second clown of the week. And my OG of the week is the Bishop of Joliet, now the new Archbishop of New York, Bishop Ronald Hicks. I actually had the privilege of seeing Bishop Hicks be consecrated at Holy Name Cathedral back in 2018 when I was still a seminarian of the Archdiocese of Chicago. And I think it's great that Chicago-style politics still lives on, even in the Vatican, where our boy Bob is putting our people in Chicago in high places like the Archdiocese of New York. It is only a matter of time before I get my call and get myself a cushy diocese to which I can roll over as my fiefdom. Bob, if you're watching this, please, your humble servant Chris needs a cushy diocese. Thank you.
Hey, Chris, will you join me in giving an OG nomination to Destiny Ortiz, the Democrat on the Will County Board, who not only voted with Republicans to stop a tax increase in Will County, but got removed as the chair of the Legislative Committee for daring to stand up to Bertino Tarrant, or however the hell you say her name. So one of my OGs is going to be Destiny Ortiz, even though she's a Democrat. Kudos to her.
And since you brought it up, Colin, I'll also add wasn't going to bring this up for time, but Jackie Trainier, another Democrat on the board, who called Raj Pillai, who was speaking of public comment. She referred to him as a doctor. I don't know who the hell she's talking about. Raj Pillai is a CPA and a veteran. He is not a doctor, but apparently he's a very good doctor, according to Jackie Trainier. So look it up. It's on Raj's Facebook page if you want to see her make a fool out of herself.
I'll keep us moving here. I'll be the controversial one. I'm kind of shocked Patrick hasn't done this one, but I'll do it before he does because I guess it's my job to piss everybody off this week. But I'm going to put Trump in here. His post about Rob Reiner. Listen, you can't get on your moral high horse about the Charlie Kirk assassination and say that anybody who said something awful about Charlie after his death, which I agreed with, by the way, was bad, and then be okay with the post that Trump made about Rob Reiner. Listen, I get the political differences, but I don't care. This was below the office of president. Should be below all of us. I'm not okay with it. You shouldn't be okay with it. I've seen way too many people defend Trump on this. Just because he's the head of your tribe doesn't mean you can't admit that he made a mistake. And on this, he made a gigantic mistake, one which shows a little bit of a lack of character that I'm not okay with.
Well, the problem is it's like the 1,000th worst thing that he's done in the list of awful shit that he's done in the last 10 years. So it's hard for me to get my gumption up on that one.
Fair. What else you guys got?
I've got my clowns would be Rick Turvin and Tanya Genovese, the members of the Illinois State Board of Elections who work for or worked for law firms and unions that were tied to illegal contributions to Don Harmon, that were the subject of the $10 million fine that they were to be voting on in the fine that had been levied against him, that they voted with Harmon to dismiss. It goes to show just how toothless and feckless and ridiculous the Illinois State Board of Elections is. Blow the damn thing up now, or at least appoint a ninth independent member to that board so that you don't have these stupid 4-4 partisan fights.
100% agree on that one. I'll give some of mine. You guys are welcome to jump in with yours as you want, but I want to keep us moving. Approximately 550 Illinois Army National Guard soldiers have returned from overseas ahead of the holidays. Really fun story, really cool story of them coming home and being greeted with cheers and hugs and tears on December 6th and December 12th. Really happy to have them home. They served in places like Jordan and Syria and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Kuwait and Israel. Some of the stories that they shared of things that they did. It's really, really cool. Thank you to them for their service. Welcome home. We're so glad to have you home. OG for sure. Another one here, Jennifer Davis, running for IL8. She was speaking at a candidate forum a couple weeks ago, and she fell between the risers and like ripped up her legs, and then got up and finished her speech, and then went to the hospital and had it cleaned up. I mean, it's not quite Teddy Roosevelt getting shot, but I applaud the dedication. With your legs dripping blood, you're still standing up there fighting for your candidacy. So well done. Certainly applaud that. Lane's going to bring a picture up on screen. One of our viewers sent this along. They were at an art museum and they saw with beer can art from Chicago breweries. They saw this beer here called the Smoke Filled Room, which is a NEIPA Double India Pale Ale by Hop Butcher for the World. I tried to find it somewhere so I could try it. Probably wouldn't like it. It's got tropical notes like pineapple and grapefruit. And for this guy who only exclusively pretty much drinks dark beers, probably wouldn't like it. But hey, there's a beer called the Smoke Filled Room out of Chicago. I like it. So OG to whatever the heck that is.
And I do have an OG that will surprise you boys.
Okay.
Mike Bost, Darren LaHood, and yes, the worst congresswoman in the history of Illinois, Mary Miller, have all sent a letter to Donald Trump saying, please, under no circumstance should you grant a pardon to Michael J. Madigan. This is going to become a clown show, and if it winds up with Lisa Madigan making direct appeals on Fox News and Newsmax to Donald Trump, I'm going to lose my damn mind.
And if it's any consolation, Patrick, I don't think Trump's actually going to pardon Madigan for two reasons. One, he didn't pardon Burke, who was literally his property tax attorney in Chicago. So if he wouldn't pardon Burke, why would he pardon Madigan? And two, he just pardoned Henry Cuellar, and then Cuellar like bamboozled him into thinking that he was going to change parties, and then he didn't. So I don't think Trump's going to move to pardon any Democrats.
We're almost out of time, so let me just quickly give one more clown, and then we're going to shut this thing down. But we have to bring this up. Patricia Martin, former presiding judge of the Juvenile Court's Child Protection Division in Cook County, bilked a decorated World War II veteran out of almost $400,000. She has pled guilty, but this is a former Cook County judge. She's only been sentenced to 4 years of probation. Obviously, I would have certainly loved to see more for doing this to a World War II veteran, one of our nation's heroes. Pretty sickening if you read the story of what this former judge did in Cook County. She should be famous for being such a despicable human being. So Patricia Martin, clown of the week. It's almost a guaranteed just win just for that. So has to be mentioned. All right, we are out of time. So we were going to do a segment OG and Clown of the Year. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you guys each a chance in like 3 seconds. If you've got a name you want to throw out there for either one, do it fast. We're going to ask our audience in the next 2 weeks, send us your thoughts too. And we'll do a segment the next time we're back and decide who wins our OG and Clown of 2025. So to our panel, any quick thoughts on names you want to put in for either OG or Clown?
Clown Brandon Johnson, obviously, just because he's appeared so many times on our short list.
Yeah.
Patrick, I'm going to buck the crowd here and say Gregory Bovino, who has ruined the lives of innocent Americans who have been fired from jobs and arrested and detained for no reason, all in this faux in adventure to go and get the quote unquote worst of the worst. He's literally one of the bad dudes, and should be treated as such.
Any other OGs or clowns you guys want to have before we move on?
Clown of the Year, Max Solomon. OG of the Year, Pope Leo XIV.
Okay. All right. If you're watching or listening, please send us your thoughts and we'll do a whole segment on it the next time we're back. With that, closing thoughts. Michael and Chris, please do yours quickly. Michael, go ahead.
Hey, we'll see you next year. Merry Christmas. Enjoy some time with the family, and then we'll get right back to it.
I like it. Chris?
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, enjoy your vacation, take some rest. March 17th is coming soon.
Patrick Pfingsten, founder, editor, and producer of the Illinoize. Check him out there. Check him out on WMAY News in the afternoons. Patrick, your final thoughts?
I know I have a reputation for being a bit of a grumpy fellow. I just want to say I'm taking time over the holidays this year to be thankful, and specifically trying to look at things through the eyes of my 4-year-old boy, and our little girl who just turned 1, and trying to find the joy in them, find the joy in all of the good that we have in our lives, and put politics to the side for at least a couple of weeks.
I like it. I'm going to close with this. Patrick brought up the letter that was sent to Trump, not to pardon Mike Madigan. Lane, I'm going to ask you to bring up the last page there with the signatures from the 3 Republicans. Here's my takeaway from that. That was depressing to look at. It is so pathetic to look at a sheet of paper, and there are 3 Republican congresspeople from Illinois. I know the math, I've known what the number is, but just seeing it, that the entire Republican delegation signed this letter and it's 3 lousy signatures. Could you please look at this with me and say, you know what, in 2026, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to focus on actually winning elections in 2026, because the only way you're going to change policy and change the world is if you actually have a seat in the halls of power, and you can't do that if you can't win a freaking election. So let's go out and let's win in 2026. In the meantime, enjoy the holidays, spend time with family. We'll catch you soon.